Hi, folks. So today is going to be a little interesting. I usually do the talks specifically about something kind of about what I do for a living, whether it be UX, design, UI, video, sound, audio, whatever. It's about that. This is not that. This is going to be a high-level overview of what kind of roles and jobs and responsibilities are currently in the market. So when folks are looking for specific jobs in UX, which is growing and expanding and getting its tentacles into just about everything these days, I wanted to kind of level set with with everybody today, just to say, when people talk about UX in 2021, this is the kind of stuff that they're going through. And this is more my own personal views and experiences. But the best part about UX is that the very nature of this industry is that we embrace change and how we meet it. So let's get started. What is UX? Let's just start there. As a practice, UX encompasses all the aspects of an end user's interaction with a company, its services, and its product. Super vague, right? So UX means user experience, and that's not really helpful. So why don't we dig into it a little bit? One of the big things about being a UXer is that just no matter what aspect of it you're in, you're going to have to deal with requirements. So let's break this down to requirements. 4 things. 1, anything UX related must have the goal of meeting the exact need or needs of a customer. It also needs to be centered around being simple and elegant. Sometimes you'll hear the phrase joy and delight. These 2 are more my contributions to this, is that it's about seamlessly merging services and cross-functional disciplines while keeping core responsibilities within UX principles. And I got these underlined, disciplines and principles, because that's the next thing we're going to go through. What is a discipline? What's a principle? Disciplines, and this is, I've got this from UXPA. There's 8 core tracks. So you've got interaction design, information architecture, marketing communications, usability engineering, visual design, content strategy, copywriting, and creative tech. That's all under the wing of UX. Now, sometimes people say like, well, I don't know, I'm in creative tech, or I do more front-end development, or I'm content strategy. So it's like before you even get to user experience, it's more about, it's all part of it. And most people will need to know a little bit of each little piece in order to get their job done. So, but let's dig into it a little more. So what are each one of these things? Interaction design is about how users focus on the actual specific interactions of dealing with products. How do you communicate how users should engage with things while they're experiencing your product? Information architecture is about providing a good user experience by planning and designing the structure of the information, how the webs and web apps are organized. Marcom is about branding, it's about messaging, it's about your voice, your tone, and the media and social channels that you want to interact with on your key audiences. Usability is about drawing theories from computer science and technology and psychology to be able to define problems that occurred during the use of such a system. So being able to test, being able to research, finding the information, some of it is assumptive, but more and more of it is moving toward hard proof, data, and actuals. Visual design and UI is really about text, colors, images in a way that enhances the experience. You can have a really phenomenal website, but if it doesn't have a good design, visually, aesthetically speaking, then that's a core component you're missing. Content strategy is incredibly important, and it's also kind of a dumping ground for a lot of stuff, because it's about everything related to the strategy, about planning, making sure that the process of whatever your business goals and objectives are put together in a way that makes sense for everybody else on the team. Copy is another really important one, and a lot of folks link it into content strategy, but for me, I feel like copy and UX writing is becoming its own specific thing because of how involved they are through the entire process, and how written language really does help people make decisions more efficiently. And then, of course, creative tech is about how human beings actually interact with whatever platform or experience that you're offering them. They provide the logistics. They're the ones that take fake prototypes and move them into real environments where people, hundreds, millions of people, can actually engage with it, because not everybody can engage with the prototype. The data is not there, et cetera, et cetera. Each one of these is important. So let's talk about how these are connected to the principles of UX. I feel that, and this is fairly subjective, that each one of these 6 principles, information architecture, usability, research, interaction design, visual design, and content, all have major touch points. So what I'm showing here is that there's like, well, information architecture is really closely linked to, of course, IA, but it's also really connected to the creative technology aspect and the usability aspect. So each one of these principles needs to have core pieces to it. And this can get kind of confusing. This is where people, when you're starting to match principles to disciplines, it kind of gets muddy. And a lot of folks end up being really flexible to try and accommodate this. Just to show you, this is what usability is connected to. This is what research is connected to. Interaction design, visual design, content. It gets messy. And then it gets really hard to follow because people aren't really sure what's matched to what. The only folks that really know are the people actually doing the work and the people that are engaging directly with those people. So UX is really, it's a hard industry to follow when it comes to what kind of things someone should do at one point in time. So just saying you want to hire a UX designer could mean one of these things, 2 of these things, all of these things. When you're looking for someone very particular within the field of UX, it's important to understand what kind of issue you're trying to solve. Now, why does UX even matter? Here are 3 prime examples of what happens when prioritization goes a little wrong. So the first one is an example of an elevator where they have these beautiful buttons on this cool brass, brass button board, and they've got stickers with Braille attached to them that say the exact same floor next to the button. And this felt to me like someone wanted to pick, they want to pick aesthetics over usability. And in this case, it's an accessibility use case where if someone who's blind needs to come into this elevator, they have no idea what floor is what because they don't have Braille access. So someone decided they were going to fix that, not by replacing the buttons how it should have been done, but just by sticking stickers next to it. And now it just makes everybody confused and it looks like a mess. What happens when you prioritize speed over testing? Sometimes you end up with the right things in the wrong place, where here, this door is only open if you can pull it open, and there is no handle on it. It's only push plates. So how are you supposed to get in the door? All the stuff was there. The handle's probably on the inside, but you won't know that, and you can't get entry to this building because it just doesn't work that way. So sometimes you miss things or things go in the wrong place when it's not fully vetted and you haven't been able to do any research or testing or just making sure it's right before it goes out into the world. That's a UX thing. And then my favorite that everybody loves to hate is the Juicero. This is one of the worst products that was ever made. It sounds great. It's supposed to be a juicer that you get these little baggies and you put them in this thing and it squeezes out fresh juice for you. Sounds fantastic, right? No, that defeats the whole purpose of why you'd even want a juicer. You're not using fresh vegetables or fruit. You're not actually getting the micronutrients that come in because they decay far too quickly for it to be able to be useful. And then it comes with these disposable packages that are essentially plastic. So really all you're paying for is for someone else to squeeze your container to get juice particles into a cup that was made at a factory ages ago. It's not fresh at all. So it really kind of defeated the whole purpose of why you'd even want a juicer in the first place. And that's what happens when you prioritize form over function. It's like, yes, the technology exists, but should it be used in this way? That's a UX thing. So earlier when I was talking about what happens when you have someone who wants multiple things and they have all these expectations about what a UX person is, this is a really great way to be able to kind of see the landscape of what types of role styles there are. There's generalists, there's specialists, there's hybrids, and then there's the ever rare unicorn. Generalists are usually good at a little bit of everything, but probably have like one or two specialties. Not incredibly, varied. Most people fall into the generalist category because they've usually needed to learn every step along the way. So they know the content strategy, they know the information architecture, they know how to build design language systems, they know how to test, they know how to do a little bit of everything, but maybe they haven't had a ton of experience in all of it. So in this case, someone's really good at doing visual design, but not maybe, mid-level at some of the other things. A specialist, on the other hand, is someone who can do one thing really, really well. Like this is someone who absolutely can go in and do a whole talk just off the cuff about whatever it is that they want to be able to talk about. So if someone says, I'm very confident in my skills as a information architect, then they would be able to just start talking and just run through it and educate and teach just about anybody, if they have that, soft skill. But a specialist is really about finding that one person who you trust to be able to help redefine how that particular principle is run. Hybrid is the next step up. That's someone who has multiple levels of serious expertise that you would be able to bring them in, and they are hard to find. Finding someone who's really, really good at both interaction design and animation and prototyping, and making sure they know how to build design language systems from scratch, and making sure that they have the visual aesthetics to match, and that they have the experience to be able to back it all up with, it's really challenging. That's 6-7 years of experience in the field of UX itself. Yes, you can argue that it's been around since the beginning of time. It's also really only been around as a professional practice for like the last, I'm going to say 12 years or so. Before then, it was graphic design, and before then, it was webmasters. So this is an evolving industry. And that being said, some folks have been around since the beginning. And these are the unicorns. These are the ones that you're going to have to pry from the cold, dead hands of clients and in-house agencies and marketing teams. They are the rarest of the rare, experts in just about every single field, regardless of skill set or tools. You need to throw a bunch of money at these folks in order to get them to go anywhere, or give them an amazing project that really motivates them. Unicorns are not easy to find. It's best to just look for someone who's a hybrid, best to look for someone who's a specialist. It's just easier to do, and it makes a lot more sense. Why am I going over this? Why am I saying like generalist, unicorn, hybrid? It's because finding these people are very difficult, just as a statement. Finding the right UX people, it's hard. I mean, I've done a ton of interviews. I've done a lot of, instances where people have to take design challenges, or they, have to go through cultural interviews and everything like that. A UX project can be months, if not years long. So when you bring someone in specifically for a UX task, whether that be contract for 3 to 6 months, or you bring them in for a full-time gig, you want to be able to source and find people the right way. And I'm making the statement right now that no matter what industry or what company or whatever you end up trying to bring in, design and creativity is one of the hardest roles to fill. It's because it's hard to judge. You need a portfolio, you need a resume, you need experience, you need a lot of work to be able to prove that you can be placed in a position and in a very short amount of time be able to be up and running. You have to, tools, methodologies, practices, agile, scrum, whatever it is that role requires, you need to be able to fulfill that and provide a portfolio on top of it. So making sure that your type matches the need is really important. And to get that information up front when you're meeting with your client, and work with your design leadership teams to make sure that when you're onboarding and when you're scoping work, that it's done correctly. And that way, if you do need to source talent, that someone is on the ground that has holistic firsthand knowledge of what the client needs. So let's talk about actual job titles. So I've talked about role types, I've talked about principles, I've talked about, a few different things, but this is where the jobs actually are. These are the type of things that you're going to see on LinkedIn, the stuff you're going to see on Indeed.com. And I'm including project managers in this because of how incredibly valuable they are. Being able to bring in project managers, they are the bread and butter glue of the whole project. They're the ones that help motivate struggling creatives. They're the ones who help get answers when they don't have them. They're the ones that keep people on task to make sure that the burn rate stays as low as possible. They help motivate and move the team forward. So no, it's not necessarily a creative type job, but having someone who knows the basics of UX, UI, and just entry level graphic design terminology and understanding of the process that's behind it, those project managers are incredibly valuable. So I wanted to make the statement that any PMs listening out there, you are valued, you are needed. We may complain about you a lot, but we love you. Researchers are becoming more and more specific. Being able to gather the right type of data, the right type of analytics, is now becoming more and more platform and tools driven. So they want to be able to know and integrate into whatever project they're going to be brought into. So let's say you want to find a researcher, you're like, okay, well, what do you know for testing platforms? Do you use Maze? Do you use Usability? Do you use UserZoom? Do you use usertesting.com? And sometimes that knowledge will be that'll weigh out whether or not you actually get the job or not. User research is still pretty new, 5, 6, 7 years. Because of the enormous amount of testing and methodology that's been attached to it, more and more people are starting to get involved in it because they realize the benefit of it. That if a business or a client is willing to make the investment in doing preliminary testing, that means they're really serious about their product and they want to make sure they get it right and get it right the first time. Definitely a measure twice, cut once type of deal. UI designer. UID is really all about first impressions. Making UI a priority means you're able to craft a complete design language system that enables everyone who can build the platform, a website, or etc. They have full access to a suite of pre-built assets. They're meant to be used and reused in a managed system that adheres to accessibility and brand standards. UI is what most folks are familiar with, but this is a statement I'm going to make pretty clear. All UI is UX. Not all UX is UI. So making sure that user interface and how people interact with products is separate from how the products are actually built behind the scenes, how they're organized, how they're aggregated, how the platforms they're built on, the strategies behind them, the thinking behind it. That all needs to happen in other ways of experience design, not UI. That being said, let's move on to the next one, which is interaction design. And this is about the colors, and it's not about colors and layout. That's UI. That's wireframing. But that's really only half the battle. ID folks, keep your users in mind when it comes to how they interact with each element on the product. This means minimizing click paths, making sure users can find what they're looking for without challenge, and offering delight and amusement through animation and easing and things like that. It's about how to make small experience. When you're an ID person, you really want to focus on, when I hand this off, is someone going to enjoy this? Are they going to enjoy working with it? Because they're the ones that apply the polish. Say, like, you know what, this is too many click-throughs. Like, I don't need to click an X and then click cancel and then click, are you sure? Yes. I don't need that second confirmation screen. And they're the kind of person that will help you minimize and, expedite the path to success. Content strategists. Now, CS people are really unique because they're the ones who refine each persona down to its core values. Whether or not it's your customers or at the awareness or the decision-making stage, you need your content strategist people to hook them and reel them towards the cart, just keeping them engaged until they're a customer, not just a user. All right, let's get on to one of the new ones, UX writing. Now, this is a new title. More and more clients are starting to ask for UX writers, as it's the practice of designing the words people see and hear when they interact with your product. It's about having a conversation with the product and the user. Writing is still writing, but don't get thrown off by the name. The principles are still there: clarity, consistency, precision, self-awareness, revisioning, and thoughtful attention to the audience. It differs a lot from CS because it has unique constraints. UX writing can also be done by information architects. The main difference is establishing context in the environment in which it's produced, rather than just trying to organize everything before it's built. It needs to be concise and communicate a lot of meaning at the same time. So just like poetry, UX writing is a concentrated language, just like every other kind of design. Accessibility, along with globalization, localization, they're all key factors in making sure that everyone can read and understand your product. So now that we've kind of looked at what kind of jobs are out there and what kind of roles and role types and all that, this is how you actually get results through UX. So user experience is a term that's not really easy to define. But once you kind of get the concepts, it's easier to apply to actually hiring and finding the right people for the right job. But by focusing on the definition of user experience to only those types of human behavior that we can control, we can develop really easy to use, efficient, and pleasing site offerings that always keeps leads and customers returning for the second show. By employing the 6 disciplines of UX and using data in the way that enables visualization and tracking, you can improve user experience the more that time goes on. And the truth is that any UX process is never really finished. But these 5 things will keep any UX initiative on track. So you've got consistent and accurate branding. Anyone who visits your site shouldn't have to worry about whether it's representative of your skill set or your talent level. And this includes everything: your website, your marketing material, your social media channels. Good brands mean just loyal customers. They know what to expect. It's safe, it's security, it's confidence. Pay attention to your brand. Build clearer calls to action. No UX project is perfect, but these bring success as a path. It's like I was saying about interaction design. It's about reducing clicks, less scrolling. Is it accessible? Is it above the fold? Are there going to be problems using it on a phone versus a tablet? Inform your users what they can do, and then let them do that. Make sure that the audience that you're choosing is given the right content at the right time. Making these types of products and websites, they're not vanity projects. These are things that are meant to make money. They're meant to grow businesses and grow people. Any project that UX people are involved in, it's about building for a specific audience. And finding that audience is part of our job. So whether it's we're crafting personas or we're doing research down to selecting colors that resonate on a mental level, like, oh, I love the color red because it makes me hungry, or I like the color blue because it's really popular in tech right now. All of that stuff, that's all related to UX. And then we get to user behavior, expertise, and proof. Now, when you make assumptions, we've all heard the phrase about what assumptions do, but it doesn't lead to just insulting words. It really just descends into chaos, because if everyone puts in their 2 cents about things without actually having data and science to back it up, it just gets really confusing, and everybody has their own opinions, and then it just gets really nasty. So having real research prepared gives your users the chance to be able to react and interact with your products quickly, efficiently, correctly, and then be able to take that data back and then analyze it against what you were expecting. You're able to pivot and change far more quickly. And the last is about not being stuck. When new tools are coming out all the time. There's a ton of UX tools out there. When I first started doing UX, it was like Adobe Illustrator and InDesign and paper, essentially, paper prototypes. And it's evolved. There's tons and tons of products out there. I mean, Figma has just been blowing up lately. Adobe XD is catching up. Sketch is, struggling nowadays. And who would have thought that 5 years ago? InVision has its own platform. UXPin is really starting to come up as a browser-based software, super powerful. There's a whole bunch of add-ons. Don't limit yourself. I remember when I was agency side, there was one gentleman who refused to work in anything other than Photoshop CS5. And this was like 2013 when Adobe CC was first becoming subscription based. And after a while, he just couldn't even open the files, but he was insisting that people convert them to him and then move them over. And it just caused a lot of problems. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the case for, a lot of people, but I recommend staying on top of your craft. Being, understanding what's out there, what's working, why it's working for people, what are its benefits, what are what are the negatives behind it. This is a constantly evolving and adaptive landscape. The first statements I made, in this talk was about how everything changes in this industry. It's about user experience and what users want and what they're going to expect, and what they intend to experience is going to end up being different almost every day. But having a clear concept of what specifically each product that you are trying to build for has, each of these principles will be able to get you there. So I want to say thanks to everybody. That's all I have for today.